Game begin.
All right, Mike, that was a fun conversation with Sam that we had. Before Sam Black joined us, we were talking about Michael Arnold's Dead Guy Ale. We had commented that it was maybe worse than Draco Blast. I had joked that Michael Arnold should have gone triple combo mid-range with Draco Blast, Chance Encounter, and Dark Secret, Secret Force. But yeah, let's talk about this Angel McAngel face deck.
Yeah, we never talked about Angel McAngel face. So you joke about Chance Encounter, but I kind of don't hate that. How
many copies do you need to run? Like, you just do 4 Frenetic, 2 Chance, and then you have 4 Portent in your deck?
I was a savant about this, actually, years and years ago in Extended. I remember there was an Extended Worlds that I think it was the year after Andre Coimbra won with my Naya deck, and I actually was just playing Extended Queues on MTGO, and I beat your hero, Gabriel Nassif, in the finals of the queue. And the only people who were playing like these Extended Queues were, I guess, me, who I was testing for Worlds for, like, Dave Williams was playing my decks that year and stuff. And I get like people like Nassif who were like literally at Worlds, you know, testing. Nobody was playing this format other than the people who cared about it, who had a reason to care about it. And so I beat Nassif. I was playing a Cruel Control deck, you know, kind of Cruel Ultimatum, Control Elements, and I just played like 2 Pestermite and 2 Splinter Twin, and it was before Deceiver Exarch had been printed. And I won the queue, and I beat Nassif in the finals with the combo. So I played 2 copies of each in a deck that had a lot of library manipulation, but was also designed to make the game go long. So if your end game is Cruel Ultimatum, you're implying that you're going to play 7 to 9 turns anyway. So you have a lot of time to draw into pieces like that. So you don't need to just like play, you know, 4 hyper redundant copies of things like, let's say, Dreadnought does.
Yeah.
That said, I mean, I think you can get away with like 1 Chance Encounter, 1 Chance Encounter and 2 Frenetic Efreet, maybe.
The Efreets get in there. I feel like they're just fine in your tempo deck or whatever. You know, your like creatures and counterspell deck. It's got a little bit of built-in evasion and resilience, but that's neither here nor there. Mike Arnold has elected to go with a counterspell and draw card heavy version of the Angels deck, where we have 4 counterspell, 4 Portent, 4 Impulse. The regular cast is also here: 6 Angels, 4 Mage, 3 Moms, Bolts, Fire, Ice, Disenchant.
I don't like this build at all. A couple of reasons. One, he only has 2 copies of the Good Angel. I think if you're going to play this strategy, you really want to go Angels Tribal. One of the main reasons I think people don't necessarily appreciate is, especially if you look at the complexion of the decks in the PSS, Exalted Angel is by a mile the best card in this deck against the Rock. Like, it's incredibly difficult for them to deal with. Like, it's hard for them to Diabolic Edict it because you have other garbagey creatures like Mother of Runes or Meddling Mage just kind of hanging out. It is very expensive to destroy with a Pernicious Deed, so just getting it on the battlefield and flipped, you almost certainly win. Nothing in their deck can race it, right? It does more damage than a Ravenous Baloth relative to how much life it's gaining. Ravenous Baloth gains 4 life 1 time. Exalted Angel gains life each time. It attacks. It's also, if you ever get to flip it against mono red, that is really bad for them unless they have a Sulfuric Vortex in play. And this deck is incredibly vulnerable to mono red, and Mike Arnold has not built his deck in a way to resist mono red at all. Right, so it's tons and tons of non-basic lands, which is going to play into Price of Progress. If you look back at like BK's deck from last year, he could worship block a mono red opponent. He could just hide behind Silver Knight and worship or something, and he would win the game. Those capabilities are not here. But the thing that I dislike the most about this deck is it's got double U on Counterspell on 2, 4 Portent, 4 Impulse, and only. This is 21 lands, Lanny, right? Like, this deck is very, very, very dependent on having a heavy amount of blue early. And to not have Coastal Tower in a deck that dependent on blue, and I don't know what the conflict between Coastal Tower and Portent is. It's obviously a non-zero. Like, that is really, really, really cutting the paper thin. And so, like, this is a kind of deck where if all of its cards come out in order and the way that you want them to, it probably wins every matchup. Honestly, it's unbeatable if every card comes out in the order that you want it to in the matchup you're in. Except maybe against mono red. Even against mono red, maybe you can like resist with lightning bolt, fire ice. Just don't draw your cards that aren't good against them, and then land 3/4 angel, land 4/5 angel before you're dead, and then you turn the game around. But like, I don't know, man. 2 battlefield forge, 2 basic mountain, 4 counterspell. Like, you're asking for it. You are just asking for it. It is not going to be a good answer.
Yeah, it's a pretty common criticism of this deck that the mana is like very difficult to work through.
BK made it work, and that model exists. He chose not to use BK's model.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I do think that, like, for what it's worth, myself included, everyone showing up to the PSS likes to, show some looks that they personally prefer. So they're playing a little pet deck. I mean, come on, we're talking about a 62 card rock deck. Like, Mike Arnold came. He's to
Lady
vibe.
Gaga. He's coming out in a meat skirt, right? Like that is a fashion statement. I love that about him. That one I love, right? Like no arguments. The only argument I have is Jamie Wakefield didn't like to see the first turn swamp, which I respect. He very, very, he took an old atomizer and atomized himself with 30-year-old Jamie Wakefield sweat, but applied it to a contemporary pre-modern mana base. But he still, has the stink of 62 cards. I appreciate that on his meat skirt, but like the Star Spangled Slaughter deck could have been so much better.
I think there's something to be said for counter magic in the deck. I think there's a lot of tension between your 4 and 3 and 4 drop angels and like trying to hold up the counter magic.
The problem with this archetype and the kinds of cards that Mike Arnold has selected is that this is a deck that this is not a. You know how I say like Burn is a passable combo deck.
Yeah,
like that's the line I said. Like, so you win some games with combo, but it's not a great combo deck. And the people who are mediocre with Burn always try to play it as a combo deck. It's not a great combo deck. If you're going to pick a combo deck, almost any combo deck is better. Burn is good because it does other things really well, and it does all these things. It does like 1 + 1 + 1 = 16 or something, right? In Burn, and this is a deck that like, is he going to play a Drago game? Because he's going to try to play a Drago game. His deck isn't set up to play a Drago game on account of his first 2 lands might be City of Brass, Mountain, or something. Can't cast his counterspells consistently, right? So this is a deck that gains a lot of its advantage by deploying its mana efficiently early, getting into trades where the opponent is slightly behind, right? So imagine you're playing this against Terravor, where Mother of Runes is really strong against Terravor deck. If you land anything that you can protect, 1 or 2, and he's got premier level removal spells and Swords to Plowshares and Lightning Bolt, those things just kind of have to come out. But like I said before, if his mana comes out, his cards come out in order, he can't lose. The problem is he's built his mana base in such a way that he's dependent on casting Portent, dependent on casting Impulse, but you actually want to be casting cards like Silver Knight instead of Impulse on those turns, just so you don't fall behind. Like, Mother of Runes go, even if the Mother of Runes lives, like, Impulse is not a sexy opener in Premodern. You kind of need your stuff to go for you because you're like, what's your next play? Lightning Angel? That's a good curve play. Now you can't counterspell anymore. It's very at odds with itself. And I think like if this is a classic deck that if you draw the half of the deck that you want to draw in the matchup you want to draw it, you look like a genius. But your average draws, you can't cast your spells.
Yeah,
and you can't even pick which spells you want.
This is going to be a fun one to watch. So we know that Mike Arnold is playing against Will Hurst next week. Mike Arnold has access to Angels and Dead Guy Ale. Will Hurst has access to Fluctuator and Burn. Hurst is going to meet Alvaro in the 3rd match. Alvaro has Blue Knot and Blue Red Welder left. And then Mike Arnold will face me playing either Replenish or Burning Parfait. So this is one of the exciting things about this format. So if you're Mike Arnold, you have this Angels deck. It's probably not very good against Burn, but it's really good against Fluctuator. And then you also have this Black-White deck that's probably fine against Burn. I mean, it's got 3 Droid's Verdict. I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, if Burn just loses to, if both decks lose to Burn, then then Mike Arnold just throws it at the deck that he
I've
doesn't
never
wanna play
lost
against
a
me.
game 1 against Dead Guy Ale with Burn. I've only ever lost a sideboard game to a resolved Circle of Protection red, which Mike Arnold does not have in his 75.
Yeah, well, maybe that's not interesting.
Probably can never win. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how do you plan to win, dude?
Yeah.
You can't beat Price of Progress, Ball Lightning, or Curse Scroll with this deck. Literal Curse Scroll just beats you. Vindicate Curse Scroll, that's a
I think
terrible...
like you have to be like Duress into Gerard's Verdict into something into Ritual Exalted Angel.
I mean, it's just like minimal amounts of card advantage. I mean, like, yeah, sure. Ritual Exalted Angel is probably game. I don't know. Like, but that...
Hurst also has Wasteland. You know, Hurst...
Wasteland against Mono Red? Come on, man.
No. Hurst has Wasteland.
Oh.
Which is really, really funny to me because not a great choice, but I think we're going to see Hurst Wasteland a lot of opponents with this red deck. And I don't know, like, you know, maybe it'll catch the wind, maybe it won't, but it'll be fun to watch.
So somebody asked me a question recently about like the standard, which was kind of around this time, like 1998 standard, for example. One of the things that came out in 1998, 1999 standard, Kai Buddha won the world championship with the mono red Wildfire deck in 99. Selden won in 98. So 98 was kind of like the training wheels year, and then 99 was kind of the developed year. Multicolored decks could not survive against Wasteland-based aggro decks in 1999. It just didn't happen. If you were, you know, a mono black Hatred deck or a mono red, you know, what we're idiotically calling Sly deck in 1999 with Wastelands, you just feasted on these decks that, you know, were playing. Land or Waste hadn't been printed yet, actually, but like whatever kind of Gemstone Mines and Reflecting Pools, and that's a disaster. And the shame of it is Arnold could have built his Star Spangled Slaughter deck to have like basically a lockdown on Hurst next week. Instead, he's got I put him at 25% to beat Hurst.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if he had built his Star Spangled Slaughter deck a little bit differently, I'd probably put him on 80% to beat Hurst.
Yeah, Hurst is both of Hurst's decks are actually good against both of Mike Arnold's decks. It kind of feels like. I mean, like, but again, hope is Mike Arnold lines up Duress, Planner Void against Fluctuator, but the rest of the lineups don't look good.
Well,
or Meddling Mage on Fluctuator. I guess there's no way Hurst plays Fluctuator next week. It's just burn.
Yeah, but the thing is, like I said, I've never lost a game 1 in this format. Burn against that guy Ale, and I've only lost sideboard games to the card Circle Protection Red. And Warmth is not Circle Protection Red. Like, Warmth isn't even... I don't understand these two Warmths in both of these decks. Like, these are the deck that you would want Sulfuric Vortex against. Right? Like, all he's doing is creating a liability on his own disenchants.
Well, luckily like, there's but one copy in 75 for Hurst of Sulfuric Vortex.
Really?
Because he cut the curve down so much. So
maybe Arnold got a scout that Hurst was.
Yeah,
I saw a deck in one of the groups, and people were like, you know, tell me if my sideboard strategy's right. And I was like, the sideboard strategies are atrocious, but your 75 is also atrocious.
Yeah,
and like,
well, the
thing is like, well, how can you sideboard right? Your deck has terrible tools.
Well, yeah, the post was like, please don't comment on the deck construction. Please just tell me if the sideboard strategy works. It's like well, those two things do go hand in hand, but I mean, there was a thing like it's like 11 cards that are not just bad but atrocious in the mirror match, like Flame Rift. Like that level of card, and you can't take them out. There's no swaps. Yeah, well, not a card you could bring in. That's neither here nor there. I mean, sideboarding is an art, and you know, some people are on a different part of their journey in you know, learning the ins and outs of that. But I think we should move on to Alvaro's lineup. We got 3 more lineups left. Alvaro is on Mono Red Ponza, Mono Blue Knot, and Blue Red Welter Prison. You know, Tinker, whatever you want to call it.
Is Alvaro an innovator of Blue Red Tinker?
I actually don't know offhand. I would assume so. My gut is telling me that Alvaro went with 3 decks that he you know, he has sort of like set the templates for.
Decks.
But yeah, I mean, they're very personal to him. I played against him, against his mono red deck in the monthly, like 3 months ago. I've seen this Tinker deck around. People love it. It's a really cool deck. I don't really know if it. I mean, it might get better.
The blue-red Tinker deck is a very powerful deck. I played against it to win one of the volleyball meetups in the finals. I actually played against it twice. Lost in the first round and then won in the finals. I think it is a very good and powerful deck, but I think it's a good and powerful deck that you would play in like a single deck 8-round tournament, not a PSS metagame. But that's neither here nor there.
I mean, it's interesting. Like, I think that it's going to line up well into like certain decks that can get prisoned out, but it's very, I don't know, it's a tough world. I think there's like kind of a hedge where you're just saying like, hopefully people swapped out all their, like, there's so many meltdowns in the PSS right now. There's like 2 meltdowns from hers. Mike Arnold has 2 meltdowns. I guess there's no more beyond that, but
the problem with playing decks like this in the PSS,
there's some null rods. Jeff White has 2 null rods.
Is you have to play all your decks, right? Like the way that I had designed my decks, like, not that I ended up the way that I wanted to end up, but like I designed it so I wouldn't have to play all my decks. I'd play a deck when I was supposed to play the deck, right? And then, like, if you have to play all your decks, like, you're just going to play this blue-red Tinker deck in a situation you just don't want to.
Not
right?
necessarily. Like, I mean, so yes and no. So basically, because you know, like, the 3 people you're going to play against, like, you just save your deck for that person, like that person's lineup. So what's important is to not have a deck that multiple decks are hostile against. So if you have, like, for instance, like, my reasoning with my Grotog deck is actually pretty simple. Like, the only deck that's truly hostile to my Grotog deck is Burn. And I queued it into the only person who has Burn in their lineup, but, you know, it was a calculated risk. And
he didn't play his Burn deck.
He didn't play his Burn deck, and I still lost. But you know, like, the purpose of that in my lineup is, like, you know, to, like, you want to pick 3 decks that are bullies, but also can't easily be bullied and don't get bullied by the same thing. So
I think so if you think about Magic normally as like a rock paper scissors sort of thing, you want to have like an advantage in 2/3 of your matchups of PSS decks, more or less, right? And that, like, that's kind of how you want to have it done. And then, like, you can give up every other match. That's why I thought, like, Red White Slide is one of the best decks you can play in the PSS. There's an incredibly wide number of overwhelmingly good matchups. It just can't beat some decks. So you don't play them in those. I mean, it's called that week.
I think the deck, like, is. I think. Well, I mean, that's basically the idea. Like, I think that everyone has picked, or at least, you know, with some, you know, some sort of personal considerations aside, for the most part, people are picking decks that they feel have those 2/3 lines. And for the most part, I actually look at, like, one thing to note. I mean, and this was the same last year, that, like, the worst decks in this PSS are, like, still, like, passable. Like, we're talking about trying to evaluate.
I mean, they should be passable, right? This is a showcase of allegedly some of the best players in the pre-modern format playing.
Prior to you know, PSS 4, you know, I heard PSS's 1 through 3 were considerably less intense,
softer.
I mean, just, like, you know, with the deck choices, like, I think people were out there to, you know, get their brews out there, and it definitely evolved into a more try hard situation.
Well, it's supposed to be a showcase event, right? Like, you're supposed to showcase something. Anyway,
well, my plan is to showcase stuff that I think is, like, really cool and competitive. Like, that's why I'm not like out there playing Blue White, not because, like, everyone knows about it, like, you know, and it's also not mine, you know, for better or worse. Like, you know, it's Fran's deck.
All right, so let's look at Mono Red Ponza for a second. I'm actually fine with playing team decks. I actually think that is the whole point of having a network. But this deck, this screams 1999 Adrian Sullivan Veggie Ponza to me. It is, you know, Adrian Sullivan, like, 28, 29 land. I'm missing a Sheevan Gorge, but I guess we make up for it with Mishra's Factories. This deck is really good at destroying a small to medium number of small creatures and then locking out the opponent's mana. It's obviously can't win in a lot of matchups. Like, just will never win some matchups. And I think it will struggle in any games that go long. The problem is that its clock is also not fast.
Yep.
So
when we saw that against Natural Order on Thursday, game one went pretty as good as it could, just like triple ported Mike Arnold out of the game. And then basically like games 2 and 3, it was just like, okay, cast Natural Order, GG. Like, you know, it's not hard to have Wall of Roots and basic lands into Natural Order for Mike Arnold.
Yeah, if the opponent has like a ton of non-basic lands in play and no sorts of plowshares, you can get him with Dwarven Miser, and then just complete Dwarven Miser lockdown. I think that's pretty cool. Dwarven Miser with Pyrokinesis, you can operate your mana, you can kill their creatures at the same time, which kind of double stunts development. I'm into that. I don't know, man. Like with land tax having not been banned yet at the beginning of the PSS deck submission, I would have been very loath to play a deck like this in a situation where all of my opponents could play a land tax deck if they wanted to. This deck's also, you know, not good against Gush or Daze type decks.
Yeah, but you would know for sure, like you would be absolutely sure that when the lineup is revealed that only Richie is going to play land tax. And
yeah, but I mean, like it's literally too slow to beat Fluctuator. Right, like I mean, I told you I would have very likely played.
Very few people. Like you gotta remember that, like, you know, people don't go in with the expectation that people are going to play those decks. Like it's just not how the metagaming would work. Like you just know that Rich is the only land tax player, and then it makes sense that Hurst is the only one sort of crazy enough to like pick up this Fluctuator deck because, like, you know, it's a big swing, right? Like. I think that a lot of people don't know how the deck behaves and like this and that and whatever. So like playing it would be a
really
big swing.
Good and has an
but you played it. You have you have like 2 months of lead time on everyone else. Remember, nobody knows about the deck until June 1st, and decks were submitted on June 13th. So if somebody wanted to play Fluctuator, they would have had no time to prepare. And you know,
I mean, man, misdirection, your pillage.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. Okay. Mono Blue Stifle Knot. This is really weird to me. Why anyone would play this deck?
Well, I mean, Alvaro is one of the
so it's a
OGs with this deck,
kind of a pet deck leak.
You know, some people on this call might be sympathetic to being on the blue train for a little bit too long.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is like evidence at hand is so overwhelming at this point that like. Also, I was never like a mono blue homer because I had any pride in it. I just copied Tom, and I never lost, right? But like at some point, Fran is beating you in the face enough that you just have to come to the conclusion that this is not the right build of Stifle.
Well, this is a player preference. So Alvaro was on commentary when Rich was playing his blue-white Dreadnought deck against Jared's Replenish deck, and basically just like didn't understand why Rich was not taking a more aggressive stance and like running out of Dreadnought. He was just like, well, Rich is just going to lose if he keeps on like letting, you know, passing the turn. And, you know, he basically led on that, you know, and this was your argument as well, that like he sees the deck as a like first gear early game deck. And the way he likes to play it is to commit that Dreadnought you know, effectively as early as possible. He does not have too much interest in playing a control game. And if you don't have too much interest in playing a control game, then you don't really feel the need to play, you know, your white cards.
So
Flooded Strands for that matter.
For sure, mono blue is a better gear 1 deck than blue white, but it's not that much better, right? Like,
I mean, that's what I told you. That's what I was telling you.
No, but I never disagreed with that point. But like, it is. How could I disagree? That is my point. It is a better first gear deck. The problem is that maybe Alvaro's not there yet. He just doesn't understand the capabilities even of his own deck. I made this argument when we were talking to Sam that people don't understand the technology in front of them, right? And so that will lead them to come to like very, very incorrect conclusions. It took us how many months to figure out that Portent was a feature, not a bug?
Yeah,
right? Like,
I mean, well,
it took us a long time to figure that out.
For what it's worth, you know, certain players, like it was Tom, Fran, and yourself who were like not Portent fans, and then, you know, myself and a couple others that I discussed with were very high on Portent, and then, you know, the rest is history. But
you like Portent for the wrong reasons.
No,
that's the argument that I was making.
No, I
right?
liked Portent. I liked Portent because it looked at more cards, and then you could shuffle your library. Like I like because the alternative
because I almost lost games because I wasn't going to combo them that turn. I would have comboed them.
Yeah, but that's one, that's anecdotal evidence, and then two, like, you know, stretched over a long enough timeline, you just didn't see when Sleight of Hand was losing you games because you wouldn't look at the third or fourth card. Like,
I was too busy winning.
I mean, that's like, so I don't know what you're trying to say. Like, obviously, Portent is better. Like, Portent is just better because the card is more powerful than Sleight of Hand in 95% of scenarios, and like this whole like slow trip thing has just been like a distraction to the conversation. Like it just like.
Oh, I disagree. I think the only reason that it's better is because of the slow trip thing.
Well, I think that's a misguided thought. Like
I mean, also
how many one-landers get busted off Sleight of Hand? Like,
I mean, whatever. I keep one-landers constantly, but
that's what I'm saying. It's like Portent is like so much better in every one-lander than Sleight of Hand by an order of magnitude. It's twice as good. It's twice as good as finding a land.
Even in playing like blue-red not, I cut both Opt and Impulse to play Sleight of Hand, so I'm playing Sleight of Hand and Portent. If you're going to play only 3 cantrips like Alvaro's playing, I substantially think you should be playing Sleight of Hand instead of one of those two. It's better than both of them. It just objectively, it's better than both of them in this strategy. And I think Impulse is garbage now. So, and I think it's garbage for all the reasons Fran said. And then when it actually happened in real life, you're like anecdotal. But that's literally how we come to, statistically significant things. You add together enough anecdotes, and that's statistical significance.
Are we trying to like say that Impulse doesn't have numbers on it, because it does? It got second place.
Alvaro's playing but like he's playing a 16 land deck. Sleight of Hand's better than Impulse in a 16 land deck for a lot of reasons. Like Impulse forces you down bad roads, and even our young prodigy Itai Kurtzman showed us how bad the roads are that Impulse can force you down because it costs too much mana.
Yeah, of course, he was the one actually sitting at the final table instead of a player who would Sleight of Hand. So I don't really know what to tell you besides 4 cards straight is not a hand, and Impulse makes your straight. And I've explained it at length. If you refuse to acknowledge how super right I am about basically everything I say, that's fine. But to the listeners, like 4 cards is more than 2 cards. It's twice as many as 2 cards. With Portent, you got 4 cards for 2 mana. That was incredibly insane that people were like, 4 cards for 1 mana. It was insane that people were like, well, between Sleight of Hand and Portent, one looks at 4 cards for 1 mana, one looks at 2. It's like, which one do I take? It's like, I'll take the one that's half as many cards.
If you're primarily focused on winning as quickly as possible, there's not even an argument. Sleight of Hand is better.
Oh, that's not true. Like your range, you have 2 ranges. You're describing you're describing a horrible range, because you're describing a turn 3 range, because you don't have a Sleight of Hand.
Was that horrible? If you always win on the second turn, like some of us do, it's not horrible.
Sleight of Hand doesn't make a Dreadnought hand on turn 2 because you don't have the mana to cast it.
I don't know, man.
You're telling me. Okay, God, Mike.
You literally told the dealer.
Mike, you're just. Oh my God, you're so wrong about this. Okay, so you're telling me. Okay, basically your argument is Sleight of Hand is faster because you can Sleight of Hand the turn that you combo. So conceivably, you can have not a made hand on turn 3. The first card you cast is Sleight of Hand, and then you have a made hand, and then you like send for Dreadnought. So your like the difference in ranges is like very important, because if you're casting your cantrip on turn 1, Portent's better because Portent's going to look at 2 more cards for your made hand. And if you're casting the cantrip on turn 2, because again, Sleight of Hand didn't make your hand until turn 3, Portent is still better because you're still looking at more cards on turn 2.
I would actually, this is the example that I care more about that's happened to me in real life more, right? It's like turn 4 or 5, I have like 4+ land in play. I have half of my combo because I've already lost one of my Dreadnoughts, because that's what happens. Because while your deck is powerful and fast, 12/12s are still incredibly vulnerable to removal. Can we agree on that? The opponent works really hard, they can kill your 12/12. So now I'm under pressure, right? And I'm getting attacked, my opponent's doing something productive, and I need to lace together the combo. On this situation where I'm getting attacked, my opponent has resources, I'm down a Dreadnought, it's way better sometimes to be able to put together a defensive dreadnought that, lo and behold, can attack them for lethal next turn right now. And that having to wait for that can be a liability.
Yeah, but that has no respect for mathematics. I'm not saying that there aren't, like, Sleight of Hand doesn't have a range. So I'm telling you that Portent has, like, double the range of Sleight of Hand.
I'm not arguing that the range of Sleight of Hand isn't bigger than the range of the range of Portent isn't twice as big as the range of Sleight of Hand. That's stupid. I'm saying it's slower, and because it is slower, it is not as good. No. You are playing for any other reason than the fact that it is slower.
No, I'm telling you that the range of Portent, I'm not talking about the range of cards it looks like. I'm talking about the range of winning scenarios that Portent produces versus winning scenarios that Sleight of Hand produces, right? So
but you have to subtract all the games that you don't win.
I'm familiar.
You're just ignoring the games you don't win.
I'm familiar with that concept. Basically, there's like three outcomes, right? Portent would be better, Sleight of Hand would be better, or it doesn't matter. I'm telling you, like, the Portent would be better circle of this Venn diagram is massive compared to the Sleight of Hand. Like, the Sleight of Hand would be better scenario.
I think I think. So you taught me something that you are sadly ignoring right now, okay? You taught me this thing about how some contemporary young magicians who are better make these plays that prevent them from playing longer games that they will eventually lose, right? In favor of high leverage games that they sometimes win, which is similar to what Sam was saying when his opponent took the 40% line and hit, right? You taught me that. It has actually been very instrumental to me. What you are saying with, well, there's these three kind of outcomes, one of them is bigger, you are radically, and I mean radically, underestimating the size of the Portent is worse pile. That the Portent is worse pile is so bad for one reason, because Magic exists in time. Tempo is more important than card advantage, even in Premodern, because Magic exists in time. A turn is colossal if the game is already developed.
Right, but like, I'm trying to, like, I'm cognizant of that. One, two, you're talking about a tactical question versus a strategic question, right?
No,
we know
I'm talking about
we
add together all possible outcomes.
No, we're talking about, so like you're saying with the young magicians is that they basically take they take a certain tactical line. I'm telling you that by having Sleight of Hand in your deck, you've already made a strategic mistake. Like, and I mean, I don't want to belabor this point, like, I
think this is interesting.
I don't know. I feel like I've gone through every possible angle you can take, and I think the simplest one is just play 100 games with Sleight of Hand in your deck and play 100 games with Sport in your deck, and like watch the VODs, and then I
actually did the thing not with Portent versus Sleight, because you told me you did the Portent versus Sleight of Hand thing, watching the VODs, and I believed you. So I watched the VODs on Skullcrack versus X in Modern, and I was just like, this card is even worse than I thought it was.
So why don't
absolutely horrible.
That's actually okay.
So
one of the things,
like, there's almost no situations you would even want the card in your hand.
Okay, let me actually take this to like the observation. Like, what do you? Okay, let me ask you. Let's see how your listening is. What was the lesson that I learned from the Portent Sleight of Hand data dive? Like, I watched 5 matches.
Mathematically, if you were to choose one or the other one, this one outweighs the other. No,
but what was like what is the feature? Like what is the overwhelming? Because I had a spreadsheet, and I showed you the spreadsheet. I linked you the spreadsheet, and it had multiple columns, and then I had a third column that was just an explanation column. And it was like, why?
I don't remember ever reading that, so I apologize.
It's okay. So
I don't remember reading.
So the reason is the text that's printed on Portent. The reason is that Portent Shuffle was something that was happening like an overwhelming amount of times. Like, Fran would cast Sleight of Hand, look at 2 cards. He didn't need either of those cards. He's forced into taking it.
Well, that also led you to believe even like non-blue-white versions of Dreadnought should be playing fetch lands, right? Because of shuffling capability.
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't think so. I actually want to make one last point that we should probably move on at some point. I think that we are at odds on something about how you play Stifle Knot, and I want to play it for Gear 3. And because I want to play it for Gear 3, which means that if as long as disaster doesn't happen, I'm always going to win on the merit of my deck. Sleight of Hand is a far better Gear 3 card than Impulse is, because I get out of stage 1 at a much higher rate. Whereas in Impulse, you can potentially get stuck in stage 1 in a game that you would have won otherwise. And I am assuming I will just simply win all of the games that I'm out of stage 1 on the basis of being in gear 3. And you have not given yourself enough confidence. I'm giving you permission to have the confidence to understand that you don't need the second training wheel of that mana cost, and it is going to cost you specifically games you should have won. Whereas you're saying, oh, well, this was good in these other situations, but it doesn't matter. I already won all of those games in my imagination, so we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, that's your imagination.
I'm literally saying this to you. Like, if you imagine I'm playing for gear 3 instead of you're assuming you're going to get out of stage 1, right?
No,
that is not an assumption I ever make.
It's not really about that. It's really just about it's literally raw power. Like I literally think
it's not.
No, it is.
You are a person piloting a deck against another person piloting a deck.
No, sleight of hand.
I sit down at the table. I've decided already who is supposed to win. I am just going to play out the thing at the table.
Sleight of hand and opt are really, really garbage cantrips. Like, you don't want the top 2 cards of your library so often, like so unbelievably often. You look at the top 2 cards of your library and you're like, well, these, like, please, can I have something else? And you're stuck with them and you spend a mana to take them.
Stiflenought is a 16 to 18 land deck. Sometimes you need 1 mana cantrips to circumvent the fact that you are a 16 to 18 land deck. Full stop.
No, I mean,
is half the feature of those cards. The other half is to translate them into action.
No, I understand. Like, come on, I understand Xerox. Okay, like my point is these cantrips are so weak that you're actually better off taking 2 cantrips out of your deck. Like, you know, take a given deck that has 4 sleight of hand. I'd rather have 2 basic island and 2 impulse, because half the time the sleight of hand's looking for an island, I'll just have the island, and half the time the sleight of hand is looking for action, I'll have impulse, and I'll have mana for impulse.
You don't know that it's really half, and that you're rounding it or whatever.
I'm rule of thumb. How many lands do you cut when you have 2 cantrips in your deck? Like, I'm just going to cut 4 cantrips and add a land.
I cut 2 for 4. That's how the math
that's
works.
why I'm saying it.
but I mean, I would just point out that when Itai got stuck and ended up losing because he had impulse in his deck, which is a thing that actually happened in the finals. I
literally would have just cast impulse. Like, Itai could have just cast
actually
impulse.
He should have done nothing. Accepted the fact he was going to miss his land drop and cast impulse at the end of turn. That's what he should have done.
I mean, that's also an acceptable way. I would have been fine with main phase impulse, play land.
That's not what he did. But separately,
Itai casting Gush is neither here nor there on the impulse discussion.
But I would the reason that I'm pointing this out is he has sided out 1 mana cantrips in order to be in that situation. So you're like, oh, I would just rather take this out. But he was in the situation because he broke the paradigm of the Xerox deck. And look, there's a lot of things that could have gone better for him.
No,
right? You break the model to begin with. These are now the predictable outcomes. You call them anecdotes. They're not. They're mathematically predictable outcomes when you start taking these actions.
Well, one, it's a little complicated because we just kind of had a scuffed, okay, so let me break this down. Impulse for land on turn 3 is like totally fine against land still that effectively doesn't have any punishes. Like, you know, the hardest punish would be standstill, and you can basically play through that, because if you are operating the deck how I imagine that your game plan should be, you know, the card volume of the standstill player is like not particularly important. What's important is that you hit all your land drops until you can reach the stage of the game that's important.
Well, you don't need to hit all your land drops, right? You just need to be able to take more actions than they can in 1 turn cycle.
Effectively, but having your land drops is part and parcel to that. I mean, the Gush there was just really bad. And actually, I think this was turn 4, right? Because he gushed down to
it was probably turn 3, but it doesn't matter. Like, I actually would rather finish off 2 things on Alvaro's deck. One of the things that you will see playing mono blue Stiflenought versus multicolor versions of Stiflenought is how weak the mono blue card pool is. Like, there's just so many cards in this deck that make no sense because they're not very good, and like, yet he plays only 3 counterspell. I don't get it. Like, Reality Ripple's not a good card. Boomerang is, I mean, I played it when I played mono blue. It's not exactly a good card.
Well, these are both hedges. Like, it's literally both Reality Ripple and Boomerang are meddling mage hedges, and I guess Powder Keg too. So Alvaro is like,
you could just not play in the situation where you auto lose to meddling mage.
Well, like I said, I mean, I think you're analyzing these decks under like the idea that they have to be like the absolute best that they can be, but you know, there's a little bit of gaming that's, you know, happening with some of these players where they're like,
no, he's playing 3 pet decks. I get it. That's a paradigm.
Yeah.
If he does well playing 3 pet decks, that's part of his narrative.
Yeah, content creators.
I totally get it.
Hashtag
content creators.
Content.
Content creators have a superpower that the average Magic player doesn't have. But I do also think that these are not optimal deck choices. Both things can be true, and it can be hilarious, great, whatever adjective you want to use, if and when he wins.
Yeah.
But he didn't pick the best decks.
I mean, people are doing it, like some people are doing it for the people, right? Basically, Tom and Rich are doing it for the trophy. You know, Alvaro is doing it for the people.
You're saying you're doing it for the people, but you're doing it for the trophy. You think your decisions are good. You're like me last year.
No.
I'm
double pronged. I can basically play for the trophy, but then if I lose, I can just be like, oh well, you know, I was like playing my fun deck. So I'm
played a blue green stasis deck. Lol.
But yeah, I mean, mono blue, not whatever. In this economy, come on, mono blue. We know where we stand on that. But you know, there's still some believers, and at the end of the day, if we're being honest, right, the mono blue deck is still really good, and it's still gonna win.
The blue red deck is really good.
I know. It's a
question of which is the best 12-12 deck, not whether or not 12-12 is better than everybody else.
In this actual episode of the Premodern Showdown series, it might turn out that it doesn't actually matter, because all Alvaro needs to do is catch 2 to 3 wins off the mono blue deck. It doesn't matter if it was blue or blue white, because a win's a win. So we'll see how it goes if he picks it against me. I think he might need to, since
but you spent your Growatog deck already, right? Like, isn't that one of the matchups you want?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what's actually going to happen, and this is just like leaking, so you know, whatever, you guys can have my strat. We know that Hurst has to play burn against Angels and Dead Guy, and that means that Alvaro has to save Not for Will's Fluctuator. Not's super good against Fluctuator, especially with these four sideboard annuls. Is just, come on, like it's.
I mean, Boomerang is good in this matchup.
Oh, it's just because the Stone Rain.
What I mean, all their land comes into play tapped. Yeah. That's like a double time walk.
Yep.
It's a double time walk that will often force them to discard. Can you imagine Boomerang a Dromar's Cavern on a non-lethal turn?
Yeah.
Come on, man. You can't lose. I mean, Daze is unbeatable in this matchup. Right? He has to spend all the mana that he gets from Song that. I mean, come on. Is there misdirection? He doesn't have misdirection. All right, misdirection is also insane. There's so many cards that are just unbeatable.
I can't imagine this like misdirection targeting Drain Life if it was a possibility.
Can't
ever lose this matchup. Like, it's really, really hard to lose. Like, every single card that you have pins their entire strategy.
And
like
worth
one
noting,
card versus 60.
And worth noting that the Not deck is also going to be a lock against Sly, just in case Hurst just decided to lose his mind and play Fluctuator in week 2. So that actually gives me the predictable, I'm going to play against Welder. Now, Alvaro, if he's listening, could be like, well, why do I want to auto win against Will if Lanny thinks that he's going to play against Welder stacks? Then maybe I'll auto win against Lanny and then try to queue my Welder stacks and try my luck with Welder stacks against, I don't know, Fluctuator, which the opposite situation is true. He has no tools.
Which deck do you want against Welder?
I'm not at liberty to discuss.
Anyway,
Alvaro can draw his own conclusions.
Who have we got? Will and yourself?
We got Will and myself left. So Will playing Fluctuator. We've talked at length that this is an incredible choice. I think it's just super good for this format. It's so good against so many decks, and it's so polarized good against so many decks. And all you have to do is try to get it to dodge. So unfortunately for Will, his lineup was Michael Arnold, Alvaro, and myself this week. So he started off against myself. He had to pretty much fear that both my Enlightened Tutor for Torment's Crypt deck and my Meddling Mage deck would just crush his Fluctuator deck, so he likely couldn't pick it. Going into week 2, he's going to be playing against Mike Arnold. Again, he's got to be worried about Meddling Mages, and then going into week 3, he has to worry about Alvaro's Mono Blue Knot. So, unfortunately, in this set of 3 weeks, this Fluctuator deck is going to have a hard time catching a win. But in the next set, there's plenty of goblins and elves and replenish, players and rock players to just kind of feast on with his fluctuator deck. So I don't predict a win
in the
this set.
bracket already.
Yeah.
I think. I love this choice as one of the 3 decks. Let's talk about his Sly deck. This is.
I don't want to go too deep into it because I'll put it this way. Will submitted this deck again about a month ago. He has always been a believer in Wasteland Sly. He doesn't have Browbeat, but I'm sure he was very close to putting Browbeat in here. Will's just doing it for himself. He's playing the deck. He's building the deck the way that he likes it. No Mistress Factories here. No other random spice, but he's got his Goblin Patrol over Goblin Cadet. He's got his
thank God, right?
He's got his 4 Wasteland. He's trimming on all the 3s. He's got his Parfait Beater sideboard plan. So good luck to Will. He's always proven to be able to pull incredible stuff off with decks.
This deck isn't going to lose, I think, in the entire PSS. Like, Mono Red, I think, has taken a beating in terms of its reputation over the course of the last 12 months because of the simultaneous rises of Mono Blue 12-12 and Parfait, which evolved into Blue White 12-12. And
I think the Wastelands are going to be so good. Like,
this deck isn't going to lose a match.
Yeah. Assume
like Sly used to be the boogeyman of the format.
Yeah. Look at Burn into so the next set he's going to play against like Tom, Jeff, Jared, and Rich. Like, look at Burn into Jeff White's lineup of goblins, elves, and all non-basic land replenish.
Yeah, so 3 great matchups. Well, it's not just that. He doesn't have the anti-Sly setup. If you don't have the anti-Sly setup, you can't win the matchup unless you're you, and we'll talk about your deck in a second.
Yeah. That's super great. So expect Will to bring the Burn out against Jeff White and Michael Arnold and catch a couple easy dubs. But Magic is still a game that you have to play, so we could see an upset in week 2 and like week 5 or whatever. Will's Stasis deck is effectively his classic Stasis. Some choices in here. None of them are that interesting. The core of Stasis.
As someone who was stupid enough to play Stasis last year, I think Stasis is a terrible PSS choice, again, because you have to play it.
Well, he caught the first dub.
He got you.
He got me on that. He doesn't have to play it against elves because there's only one elves deck.
No, that is an unwinnable matchup. That deck has like 8 cards that say untap, target something. I've
given Will unlimited testing time of Stasis versus the Rock. The Rock came out slightly ahead, but Will also didn't read the text of Tempting Worm. So we don't know if that changes things.
Oh, wait, so here's a question, Lanny. How does this deck not have the card Cursed Totem? Like, don't you need to stop somebody from untapping target elf?
No, because if you're in the PSS and somebody has elf in their lineup, you just choose not to play Stasis. Yeah. That's why I don't have Chills in my Grotog deck, because I'm like, well, if somebody has Burn, I'm just not going to pick it. Except for I picked it.
So you picked it for the only opponent who might have Burn. All right, so I get it. I'm stupid enough to have played Stasis myself last year, albeit a terrible version. I think that Will picked one of the 3 best, maybe probably 4 best decks you could possibly play in the PSS, being Fluctuator. And I don't think his red deck is going to lose. I have Will in the top 4, I think, on deck.
Yeah, I have Will on top 4 on deck and vibes. I've said it before, I'll say it once again. The guy doesn't lose in Magic because he has plot armor. What better deserving winner than a guy who's just out there having fun, adding crazy cards to his crazy decks and just
asking questions.
Yeah, asking questions. You really got to hand it to him. I don't know how he keeps getting away with it, but I have a feeling he's going to get away with it on this one.
Oh, I have no doubt he's going to finish the top 4. His decks are so much better than the field.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they're so much better than the field. Now, of all the humans I wish that I could be cheering for, it is my own podcast partner, Lanny Huang, as the last person. And, like, this is just Alvaro Galindo Part 2. This is 3 pet decks. Let me talk for a second, because these are your decks. You can react to what I'm going to say. How about that?
Yeah,
I'm going to pretend that you're just any idiot who I'm talking about instead of the actual other person on the podcast. First, I would like to talk about Landy's Parallax Replenish deck.
When I declared Lanny the best deck designer in the world, it was in large part because I had been playing against what was the version of this replenished deck at the time. The innovation of Mox Diamond to gain additional speed was insane. Absolutely breathtakingly insane. I've gamed this out with other people who've looked at the PSS decks, and they're like, I don't like this. I don't like this thing about Lanny's decks. And I said, look, you have to understand something. This deck is just faster. And they say, but this. And you just mulligan. Mox Diamond gets you. The way I played Replenish last year was very cast a 4 casting cost card, cast a 4 casting cost card. Use 4 casting cost cards as duresses. If one of them actually sticks, your opponent loses immediately, so it doesn't matter. But they're just basically a 4 casting cost duress. Put it all together. Once you've duressed them enough times, they have any fuel anymore. You just win. This deck is way more all-in than the version that I played last year, but the Mox Diamond helps you get away with it. The two biggest takeaways I would say are, I thought this was going to have a bad beatdown matchup. We tested it. Lanny beat me, I believe, 7-3 in game ones with my red deck against this, which was incredibly impressive to me. Again, it caused me to say that he was maybe the best deck designer in the world at the time. This deck is a chef's kiss. I still wouldn't have picked it for PSS, but it is a chef's kiss. And the other thing I really love about this deck is how much Flores DNA is still in it after all the changes. So I like that.
Shoulders of Giants
analysis is probably better than Fact or Fiction for the reasons that I played it. I do think that the lack of counterspell is an issue, but I guess you make up for specifically the reason why counterspell was there is made up by the presence of Exalted Angel, right? So maybe you don't care about the Rock at all. Maybe you don't care about getting Haunting Echoes if you can just cast a card they can never beat. Because Exalted Angel is the best card against the Rock. If you never plays Exalted Angel against the Rock, I suggest trying it. The opponent will die. You'll gain a lot of life. It's hilarious. And I think that he also makes up for a lot of it with the additional speed of Mox Diamond. So going off faster means that you have one fewer turn to get beaten up by Haunting Echoes.
Yeah, this deck can attack on turn 2 with a flipped Exalted Angel.
I'm talking. Second deck, Groatog. I mean, this is just a personal excess. Lanny won his first Premodern event playing Groatog. You can go watch the VODs. Just ignore all of the chat the entire time. There's a lot of chat during this VOD. Turn the chat off. Also, turn off any responses that Lanny has to the people chatting. Just watch the gameplay.
Oh, it's burned into the video.
Don't watch the VODs. Lanny won an event with Groatog last year at Game Storia. He beat David Tao, I think, in the top 8.
I got defeated by David Tao. So quick background, this event was 6 rounds of Swiss. So it was just Swiss +1 format. And then just like clean, whatever, pay out cards to the top 8. I committed 3 game rules violations on camera because I was sort of shaking off the rust. So yeah, the viewers from 90s MTG who are really big fans of pointing out game rules violations, went off on that one. And what can I say? I deserved it. I would never cheat my homies, but GRVs are GRVs, and don't love to see them.
Things I would say about this deck. I've never liked this strategy at all. You could pick up a lot of action. Like Fire Ice against Elves is sweet, right? Like it's cool. Locking people out with Armageddon is cool. Do you really not have Winter Orb anymore? I thought this was a Winter Orb deck.
Sideboard stuff.
It's not. Oh, you have 1 Winter Orb in the sideboard now. Okay. You can auto win against some people just by playing Meddling Mage on turn 2. Psychotog is a powerful threat. This has got to be the worst Daze foil Gush deck that you could play with the number of islands, but God bless him, I'm sure Lanny will lace those things together. So here's the thing. As much as I'm crapping on this deck, it has a wide range of good matchups. So for the same reason that I would have liked a deck like Red White Slide, I think it is probably an appropriate deck for PSS, especially if you're going to do the content creator overlap. You get a lot of extra points. If it were me, I would be Daze Gushing and foiling into a 12-12 but Lanny is too cool for that, so he's going to summon a 1/2.
Twitch chat was rooting for me. They were like, Grotog is always going to be the hero. Like people, look, I'm putting Psychotogs in the PSS. Like it's
all right.
It's everyone's favorite. Just doing it for the people.
Last but not least, I had a great conversation with somebody who will not be named about this deck this week, and I will just come out and say, no, this is a Sam Black deck. Like, no, this is a Sam Black deck. They're all Sam Black decks. This is the Sam Black deck that no one has seen.
No, this actually isn't. This isn't. Let's be clear. Sam Black never had Oath in his Burning Wish Parfait deck. He had 4 main deck Meddling Mage, 4 main deck Duress, and no Oath. Oh, in addition to 4 Burning Wish.
Sam Black's Burning Wish engine impregnated like a Riche Parfait shell.
Yep.
And this is the baby that came out.
Yep.
Oh, I like that. I like that even better. I think you probably have a huge edge against Riche straight up. I like that.
Yeah. Do you think we should? I play Riche in the final week. Do you think what the people want with the land tax ban is a final? The PSS will be the last tournament with land tax legal ever played. So should we send the people off in the last match of week 8?
You want land tax decks crapping on non-land tax hoi polloi. That's actually what you want. Nobody wants to watch a land tax mirror. I've watched a land tax mirror. I've played a land tax mirror. That ain't good viewing. So this deck has got like 3+1 Duress, which is even more Duress because of Burning Wish engine deck. I will tell you the thing that Sam Black has told me, as though it is the speed of light or the acceleration of gravity under in Earth's atmosphere. What are they going to do when I Burning Wish for Devastating Dreams? That's just the entire sentence. There's no good answer to the question. It's like, what are they going to do when I Burning Wish for Devastating Dreams? Every kind of deck, you say, well, what if they're playing this? Well, what are they going to do when I Burning Wish for Devastating Dreams? So we're going to find out what the hell they're going to do when Lanny Huang Burning Wishes for Devastating Dreams. It's like an Armageddon, but for half as much mana and 6 times as many resources. It's going to be a riot. Like any land tax Oath of Druids, Scroll Rack, Zurin Orb, Ivory Tower, Enlightened Tutor engine deck, this will not be fun to watch. It will be worse for the opponent to play against. But much as Sam Black jumped the shark with 12/12s and Misty Mountain games last week, we're going to see all new ways to ruin someone's day with a 1-mana white enchantment.
Well said. I mean, I've been on my Parfait publicity tour. I've been saying it that the first, 50 some odd cards in the main deck win you every game. So I figured, why not do Burning Wish with the remaining few? Have a little fun. Burning Wish for Devastating
Dreams. More or
dreams.
less fun than just adding a 12/12. It's the same thing, right? Like, format jump the shark had to be done. I'm obviously rooting for you.
Come on. You didn't say a single word about the sideboard Decree of Annihilation.
It's cool. It's unbeatable. It's unbeatable in the long term.
Yeah, can't counter that. It's like, what are you going to do about that? I'm really hoping. Of course, Tom Metelsky, friend of the podcast, is going to listen to this, and of course, he's not going to just willingly queue.
This is the thing you have to do is to counterspell the Burning Wish. Counterspell the Burning Wish, it's fine.
Yeah, but I got 3, and he's going to be busy countering a lot of stuff, right? So he has to counter rack. He's got to counter tax.
You can't two-spell him. He's going to get forbid, and you can't two-spell him. Let's live in reality for a second.
I'll just board in the Decree.
Yes, that is the correct answer. You board in the Decree, you'll eventually find that they can't beat you.
Yeah, I was expecting a little bit more land still this PSS, but it does feel like maybe
I would have too.
These players might not just be land still players. I mean, the biggest candidate would have been Rich, and then Rich, of course, is just going to choose to play Parfait instead.
I was thinking about this. I read a book. I'm reading a book actually right now, and there's this part where this guy's a great sword fighter, and he beats somebody else, and his patron asks him about the style that he uses. The guy looks at him, and he said, "Style." He said, I think that the biggest mistake that people make is that they talk about things like style. Is there a style to force? Is there a style to leverage? Is there a style to gravity? And I was just like, oh man, this person just eviscerated everybody who disagrees with a table for two co-host Alexander Hain. Because there isn't, bro. There's just force. There's just gravity. There's just leverage. Right? It's like, well, these guys don't like gravity. Oh, they're all floating off into space? Maybe they should get with the forces of nature.
Oh, man, I wish the viewers could see the video feed of this. We're going to have to turn into a video podcast. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't know. My decks are masterpieces. I'm a very stable genius. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to really leak too much of my strats, but obviously I think that my Grotog deck rules. I think it rules for all the right reasons. It's not the Dreadnought deck. It's just like a different Dreadnought deck. It has a better spread against control decks and a worse spread against aggressive decks.
Much worse against aggressive decks. You don't have any auto win decks against aggressive decks, though, right? That's actually one of the leaks of your
Oath of Druids. Anyone? My Parfait deck. You don't think that's an auto win against aggressive decks?
I don't know. You described Will Hurst as having a Parfait killer sideboard. So,
well, it cost him, 100 slots.
All of his slots.
Yeah, it cost him all of his slots. Like, I'm not going to beat somebody who has 10 sideboard cards against me. Like,
okay, I'm going to pick my top four. You pick your top four. I'll tell you where you were wrong. Who's your top four?
My top four players to make the top
based
four.
On deck. Obviously, some people in my top four have already lost.
My top four is going to be Rich Shea, Tom Matelski, William Hurst, and Lanny Huang.
Same. Those are the four best.
I mean, so I will say this about my lineup and like my sort of situation. When the order of players got announced, I started to have the fear because I was like, everything that I thought would happen, I was like, oh, I'm just going to line up all my good decks against their bad decks. And it's like, whatever. And I saw this stuff relief. Like, I don't even know what I'm going to do against Alvaro. Like this like welder stack.
Alvaro's already spent his red deck, right?
Yeah. But
your Parfait deck is good against his blue deck, and your Replenish deck is good against is great against his blue-red deck.
I mean, basically, we'll see. But like, I kind of like, I maybe like my problem as a player is that I like basically don't acknowledge that there are win percentages between 0 and 100. Like, I pretty much like.
You think it's binary?
Yeah, I'm pretty much just like.
I can direct you to some like mid 2000 Flores articles about how many sideboard cards you need to win bad matchups. Yeah. So it's actually a thing that I spent a lot of time on when I was like building a lot of Pro Tour top 8 building. So I went through a phase where I was building a lot of decks that were top 8 Pro Tours, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we had to figure out was how many sideboard slots you need in order to win the matchups that you were losing in game one. If you cared about winning those matchups versus how much like looseness you could have in matchups you were already winning. So as an example, I just default to this because I love the card so much. Annul is one of my absolute favorite cards in Premodern. I just start with 4 Annuls in most of my sideboards that have blue in them, right? But here's the thing. Annul is actually one of the first cards you should cut. Oftentimes the decks that are playing Annul have other cards that have Annul overlaps, for example, Disenchant, Seal of Cleansing, or even Meddling Mage, right? So, but it feels so comforting to have Annul, right? Annul's, you don't ever get in a counterspell war because you've cut off the counterspell war before it started. So, yes, there are numbers between 0 and 100. There's other things than just binary good and bad.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much am just like, things happen. Like, I'll play my decks and I'll just be like, my deck has never lost to this deck, so I'm not going to lose to game in. So, like, for example,
I lost to Tom Matelski first week last year in a matchup that I had never lost in my life.
Yeah,
he just beat me.
And I mean, that's the PSS, man. Like, normally you're just playing against like an average level player, and we're talking about effectively some of the highest level players in the format. I mean, everyone's in the top tier. Rich is, of course, in a tier on his own.
You think he shares that tier with Tom? Tom's pretty good.
No offense to Tom, but Rich
is in a class of his own.
Yeah, Rich. I mean, Tom plays correctly. Sometimes Tom makes mistakes. Rich, plays like
you said Tom makes mistakes. Tom misses things.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the thing I would say.
I mean, yeah, he does. He just we've both of us have played a lot of games against Tom. Like, you know, I've just seen him like, you know, sort of like just like miss things. Like pretty simple one. You know, our like blue white. You know, Tom played a league match. I spectated it. I birded it on Magic Online. He was playing against Fran. Fran was playing Not. He was playing land still, and he just like didn't seal a cleansing. Fran seal a cleansing before committing in another like a standstill to the board or something random like that.
Oh,
and it was just kind of like, you know, one like Rich.
Now he's just taking the text away from his card.
Yeah.
Terrible.
So
wasted the mana, and it's a super high leverage card because what's one of the huge ways that land still wins that matchup, right? You force 12-12 to trigger you.
Yeah, exactly.
That I hear you.
But like, I mean, Tom, like, let's not detract from how good of a player Tom is. Like, Tom, you have to be
in the same tier as Rich.
No. I'm saying it for the audience. Like, you know, you have to be an extraordinary player to win a monthly with the Rock. I mean, that's just what it is. Although, ironically, both players misplayed in the last turn of that. They both missed on
the last turn. So, who won in the first week? So, Will beat you.
Will defeated me. Mike Arnold defeated Alvaro. Tom Matelski defeated Jeff White, and Rich Shea defeated Jared.
What was Jeff White on?
Jeff White was playing Elves, and Tom was playing Blue-Eyed Dreadnought.
Oh, so that's a great serve breaker for Tom.
I would say so. I think that Tom knew that Jeff couldn't play Replenish because Jeff has to keep his Replenish deck open for week 2 against Rich. Otherwise, he runs Goblins and Elves both into Parfait with double Pyroclasm sideboard. So Tom knew that his opponent was going to play either Elves or Goblins, and knowing that he queued up Blue-White Knot, he's probably saving Landstill and the Rock for Jared and Rich. And I wouldn't say it's like a serve break. I think it's a coin toss. I think that there's many outcomes where Jeff could have won.
I think, you know, yes, like players like Spencer, they think that Elves is hugely favored in that matchup. If I were in Tom's seat, I didn't look at his next 2 weeks matchups. I probably would have taken Landstill.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I'll say this. One, I think Landstill can be 50-50 against Elves. I think that the Tanglewire version of Elves is a lot better against Dreadnought than the non-Tanglewire version. And
it's a lot better against Landstill.
Yeah, so Jeff doesn't have Tanglewire. But Jeff does have the sneaky Biorhythm, which... who knows if he
That's interesting because like, it actually creates pressure on counter spells. So I've never lost that matchup, and I've barely ever lost a game.
Yeah, keep survival off the board, and then keep.
They can't even. Their guys are all 1/1. They can't even get through a meddling mage.
Yeah, they can't. I mean, they can't get through a Mistress Factory either. So
yeah, so that is a. But I trust in Tom. Probably wants land still open for some other reason.
He's saving Landstill for Rich, most likely.
Yeah, he's got great matchups against Rich with Landstill.
Yeah.
So what's Rich got? Both Parfait Landstill advantage, Red Green Goblins Landstill advantage, Stifle Not Landstill advantage. So I think that's probably really wise because he's just going to play his Landstill deck. Rich is going to have a bad matchup all 3. I think if I were Rich, I'd probably keep my Goblins deck as the best chance.
Yep.
But it's not good.
But then Rich has to run his Parfait deck into Jeff's Replenish in week 2, and that could be much more difficult for him than running Goblins.
PSS metagaming. This is actually the fact that you have to play the decks makes it really interesting this year.
Yeah, shout out to Flint and Hoyt for setting that up for this year.
Who do you have? Do you have anybody in the same tier as Rich? Is Flint in the same tier as Rich? I think Flint has to be.
I just I think that the problem is I don't watch these people play enough. But I've watched a lot of Rich play because I was learning land tax, so I was like watching him play the land tax deck, and I do think that, you know, I'm just kind of enamored with Rich's ability, like the ability that he showcased to like be a brain freeze deck against Replenish. Like it makes sense when you say it out loud, but like, you know, like Alvaro's literally in the booth, like, just being like, what is Rich doing? Like, Rich is like vision charming his opponent. Like, nobody understands what's happening except for Rich. And that's like,
we talked about this thing in the Sam Black interview in the previous episode about highly tactical versus highly strategic players. I know you probably haven't watched him play very much, but I'd like to ask you what your thoughts are about a player, and then maybe the listeners at home can apply the same question to themselves. Like, what kind of player do you think John Finkel is? Highly tactical or highly strategic?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I literally haven't watched him play. I don't think I've like really seen the VODs of Finkel. So my guess would be like, okay, so I'll break this down. One, Sam Black is still a tactical player, right? You don't fill your deck with Counterspell and Source of Plowshares if you're not a tactical player, right?
I mean, so I'm talking about tactics, like, not even in the extreme, but like, if you think about it, like, the paradigm of Who's the Beatdown came out. I've never talked about this, but it came out because a player I was playing against played according to plan, right? So he played his sliver deck the way that he thought his sliver deck was supposed to play out, not realizing that that meant that he was going to lose.
Right, strategic error.
Massive strategic error. And then in the same PTQ, I watched my friend lose in the top 8 because he didn't understand how to utilize his resources at the correct speed. That's how Who's the Beatdown came out. So I think that I would, at least for the purpose of this question, align tactics with maybe improvisation, right? So like how, like assuming you understand the plan of your deck, how fluid are you about playing your cards out a little bit off the book in order to win the game at hand, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, players who have counterspells interaction, they have to play somewhat improvisationally to decide when to use them, right? Like that's kind of what you're saying.
That is what I'm saying, yeah.
Right? So, but there is still a procedure around that. So like when Andrew Cuneo made Draw Go, the rule was don't let anything resolve.
Mm-hmm.
But if you let something resolve, that's when problems happen. So Blue's not particularly good at dealing with the battlefield once your opponent's got a threat in play. But if they never get anything down, you can Steel Golem, Nevinyrral's Disc, Stalking Stones, whatever you got.
Yeah.
So that's actually part of a strategic plan. So I was asking you, to your opinion, would you imagine that the greatest player of all time, the greatest on-table technician of all time, is a more strategic player or a more kind of tactical improvisation player?
Okay, so one, what my knowledge of that era is that John always had strategic advantage over his opponents, right? Because generally speaking, the best players always had better, like they just had better strategy because the proliferation of information. And two, I don't know if like John sort of like built all his decks and then
John was the greatest deck builder in the world until he decided he didn't care about making decks anymore, which is around 1997.
Okay, cool. So
like, by 1998, he already didn't care about making decks.
Fair enough. So given all that, then I would say that John probably has to be a tactician.
So here's the sad answer. John is probably the greatest tactician of all time. So the thing that we would compare was, when would John play an unplayable card in Limited? Like, so there's just cards that you just never play in Limited, but John would play them. And the commentators at the time, myself, Randy Buehler, Brian David Marshall, had this bar that we were talking about. It was just like, when does John play the Dromad Purebred? Specifically the card Dromad Purebred. Would John play a 41st Dromad Purebred, right? And would Kai do it in the same game? And the conclusion we came to was John would play an unplayable card, sometimes maybe a 41st unplayable card, some of the times. In many cases that Kai wouldn't. And when John did it, it was probably right. It was out of Kai's range tactically to play this unplayable card. But John would see like a 5-drop, 5 toughness creature was actually good in this situation, in part because his limited deck wasn't one of his strongest limited decks, right? So Dromad Purebred was literally the card that we had made emblematic around this. But I think your answer is right. Well, except there are some tournaments where John wasn't working with the best deck designers in the world, like Pro Tour Osaka. He played a mono green Squirrels deck. That was right before he quit playing Magic for the second time or whatever. And then he magically got back onto the Hall of Fame right after that. But typically he had among the best decks at the Pro Tour and knew how to play them. Right, as a result.
I mean, I think the biggest story from that is a Mike Flores story, was just like trying to get John to coach you, and basically John simply could not explain, what he was doing to anyone else. There was they just like weren't smart enough. They weren't. There John.
Was a playtest session that I still can't even describe it.
Yeah.
Right. So 3 people at the playtest session, me, John, and BDM. And BDM comes up with this deck idea, and it's based on, there's this guy who's like Scrivener or Anarchist, but I think he's Scrivener and Anarchist from Ravnica block. Maybe he's like a 2/3 for 5. You can return a sorcery or
it's the Archaeomancer. Right? It's UU2 1/2.
So BDM comes up with this deck idea, and he's just like, I think this is really good. So I'm playing the deck that I was going to play in the Pro Tour, right? And I think I something like 10-0 BDM, and I'm like, your deck is unplayable. Why are you wasting my time? This is like a Mike Lanny situation. And John doesn't say a word. He lets us play the entire 10-game set, and he goes, I think BDM's deck is fantastic, right? And then I play John 7 straight games, and I don't come close to winning one. Same 60s on both sides of the table, right? And I can't even explain to you why. Yeah. Right? So
in strategy, you can sort of effectively explain. I mean, I think this is what Sam was talking about. It's just like you guys know you tax in between you rack in between your tax triggers, you do all this stuff, like, and that you like play infinite Swords of Plowshares. You can explain that, but you can't explain to somebody to like Vision Charm targeting your opponent.
But you can't. You can say it and then it's an unlock.
Well, yeah. Well, okay, fair enough. But
I'm telling you, in this playtest session, I was so convinced that my deck could never lose, and I just kept beating BDM, right? And John didn't say a word. He said nothing for an hour. He just watched the games. And then he said, I would like to try this side of it. He just really just, let me try this side of the table. And I couldn't win. Like, and it's probably not true anymore because John went to go work the Pantheon and stuff. John in tournaments has an overwhelming matchup percentage against me. It might be 100% in tournaments, right? But I think that at this point in the universe, maybe around 2000, I'd probably taken more games off of him than anyone else in the world, right? Just because we'd play tested together. So
right, of course.
I couldn't win a game. Like, that is like, I cannot stress this. And I played this deck at the Pro Tour and went X-3, right? So, I would have been top 8 in an individual Pro Tour. And I could not win a game. And I had just 10-0'd the same deck a second ago. So he had something going on strategically. It's not in tactical. Like, the tools at hand were the same. I want to say he didn't change any cards.
Well, he's probably just the best strategist and tactician.
He is. He's the best strategist of all time and the best tactician of all time. He would probably also be the best deck designer, but he just doesn't care.
I mean, if you're a Wandering Eye, like, what does the Wandering Eye story tell us? Does that tell us he's a better tactician or strategist? It tells us he's better. So
let's just repeat the Wandering Eye story. It's Nationals 2000. John somehow qualifies because he'd already quit Magic again at this point, right? So he's qualified for it. And day one is going to be limited, and they're about to unveil the Master Series. The first Master Series is going to be 4 people are the top 4 Americans who have the best ratings, I think, are in the Master Series, and then the next 2, I think, are based on who wins undefeated in the Nationals limited portion on day one. So John is highly focused on winning the limited portion so he can get the Nationals, right? So I'm like, I have this pretty good deck. We play 3 total games. 3 games, not even 3 matchups. 3 games with the Napster deck. John loses one of the games. Also keep in mind, I'm like, John, take this line. He's like, no, that line's wrong. Chris Pakula just told him to take one line. I told him to take the other line. He followed Pakula's line and lost. He looks over to me after this game he's lost. He says, this is obviously the best deck. We're not going to work on it anymore. We're just going to play this deck. And he only focuses on limited. So, spoiler alert, John goes 6-0 in the limited portion, heavily drafting the card Wandering Eye. Wandering Eye is a 1/3 creature with flying, I believe, that allows you to see both players' hands, right? So if he has Wandering Eye in play, both players can see both players' hands. So it just simply allows John to make the perfect decision in every situation.
Yeah, his strategy.
So he doesn't come close to losing a game.
His strategy was to put him in an unlosable tactical situation.
Unlosable tactical advantage, right?
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about the deck selection of the best players, I think if you're talking about a player like John or even Alexander Hayne would be a good example, they often choose decks that allow them to gain tactical advantage over their opponents when they have a strategic.
Yeah, that's the Brad Nelson, Reed Duke, mid-range stuff.
So like some of the decks that I really like, for example, Mike Arnold's decks, right? I actually like them. These are all conceivably decks I would think about playing. I mean, maybe I'd play a 60-card version of the Wakefield deck, but I can see the allure, right? I have personally played Lanny Rock in more than one meetup, right? Almost
you played in a side event, yeah.
and I came in second in like the second biggest Premodern tournament of the year, by the way, right? So I do like, I do kind of key on this, but the 60-second card is kind of a meme. But I mean, Tom has been trying to get me to play Dead Guy Lil for a while, and I still refuse. But I like the Tainted packs. There's good stuff going on. Jared Doucette, if he won, I would be really happy for him. Like I said, he's like the chief of staff of the pre-modern format. But like, I just don't find. You're
not compelled by goblins. Yeah,
there'd be more sizzle to this, right? I mean, Jared loves goblins, though, right?
Yeah.
I just wish there were more sizzle. I mean, Lanny Rock, you know, this is a content creator overlap. What if Lanny Rock decks all win? It'd be real interesting.
I win every time Phyrexian Rager gets in there. Like, that's a win for me. Like, I've made my mark.
I lost to Lanny Rock at the meetup this week. I was so salty. I don't think anybody in the world has played the Lanny Rock versus Landstill matchup more than I have. I played the hell out of it before LobsterCon. I beat Pog with the Lanny Rock side at LobsterCon, and Pog became obsessed with the matchups. That's like, that's all he ever wants to test.
It's one of the best matchups in pre-modern. I beat Landstill with Lanny Rock in the Rise of Lanny Rock the very first time.
So I lost 0-2. Forget about losing the match, but I lost 0-2, and the way that I lost, Landy Ho came over and he's just like, well, based on how that game went, it sounds like you probably made a mistake, and I probably did.
Yeah.
So
can't make mistakes in the Lanny Rock versus Landstill matchup, the double lane
Jeff
matchup.
White Weenie, I love the fact that he's the only idiot in the entire PSS who was an Elves deck. I mean, Elves is so good. I mean, Elves has got the edge in most matchups that aren't Goblins.
Yeah, I mean, I think Elves definitely rules, but it might just be like Elves is also a specialist deck. You have to be committed to.
No, man, it is a lot of force and a lot of leverage.
I agree, but I think that so here's what I was thinking. So this is my calculus. One of the things was we know that the Hermit Feb deck is really good, right? And I also knew that because I was replacing Fran was going to play Hermit Feb, and he didn't leak this to me. I just soul read him because he bought the cards, and you know he thought the deck was cool. So I was like, maybe I'll play Hermit Feb. But what I really didn't want was to be like live on the PSS, like punting away my matches with Hermit Feb and having Robin Lund and Mike Harris yelling at their monitor, just being like, you know, why don't you see the line? So ultimately, I went with decks that I thought was familiar. I feel the same way about Elves. It was very likely that, you know, Elves could have snuck onto my lineup. I play the deck decent. I have a basic understanding of it, and I have a lot of fun playing it. And I, like most Elves players, I don't lose very often with it. But yeah, I really didn't want to like put myself in a situation where the crowd's watching. You know, we got so many viewers. I'm sitting there tanking on a turn, and then I just like, you know, punt a turn or something, and then somebody takes a screenshot, and then, you know, Pablo Suarez is like, here's a screenshot from the PSS. First of all, Lanny's list is super bad. Second of all, the line is obviously do these 45 things.
I wouldn't want to do Elves for a similar reason, which is not just that. So like most players with Elves, I can win 2 turns slower than Olarade, right? But that's still 1 turn faster than my opponent can win. So it's fast enough. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm definitely not going to make the best play on turn 3, and the commentators have no idea what's going on.
Oh, that's good point.
Because I love Hoyp and I love Flint, and there's no way that they would 100% know what's going on. Because like if you listen to the PSS commentary, sometimes you just start talking about volleyball or beer, man. And there's like a tactical thing going on. I watched it. I was just like, I really wanted to see what they were talking about in my matchup against BK in PSS last year. The one where Mano was just like, as a gentleman, Mike should concede. I won that game, right? But they just didn't notice things like I had no planes in my deck. Like it was like this turn, I was literally out of planes. It was actually causing massive strategic implications to how I had to play the game. So there's just a lot of detail that the commentators don't necessarily get. And if you're going to play a deck like Elves on camera, A, playing awesome is table stakes, and B, if you play awesome every time, you make the commentators' jobs easy. But if you play less than perfect every time, the commentator's job gets hard, and then it exposes when the commentators are not paying the most attention, or they're going to miss something, and that's not a great viewing experience. So I think I would have skipped it for that reason. I actually think that Hermit Feb is a lot more linear than Elves in terms of the lines that you can take, linear lines you can take. Yeah. So
it's more strategic, less tactical.
Well, I actually think the number of terminuses that the Elves deck can get to is smaller than the number of terminuses that the Hermit Feb deck can get to, but the way that you get there requires a lot more resource management that is highly precise. right? So like 1 or 2 mana means a ton inside of the first 3 turns. So 1 or 2 mana can unlock 3,000 mana or something, you know, and that's just not true for most other decks.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I just think that they're similar. They're both very complex survival combo decks, and then Elves just kind of has a little bit more of a tactical game when you're like, you know, when you're scuffed and you don't have your survival, and you have like, you have to like figure out some other stuff going. Like Robin, of course, exposed like, hey, of course, for Hermit Fed, like some percentage of the game, you're just getting in there with 1/1s and 2/2s. But Elves can be like pretty robust, where like you can lace together a plan. You know, versus kind of like the Hermit Feb situation is like you're almost like a bad rock deck where you've kind of therapied your opponent out, and then you're just like getting in there with him as
or a really good rock deck.
Oh yeah, exactly.
What is that? Why is there so much replenish this year?
I don't honestly know. I don't know what Jeff's background is, so I can't comment on that. Like I said, Jared probably needed a third deck, and this is one that he just picked up cards for. And I can obviously tell you, you know, mine was just strategic. I think the deck rules. I think it's like very difficult to play, but it's very difficult to beat for a lot of decks.
You also had the opportunity to just showcase something new, different, exciting that's also good. And I think that that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll see. We'll see if I showcase anything. You know, I'm 0-1. I have the 3rd place at NA Champs curse. So.
Oh man, 3rd place at NA Champs is not a good place to be in the following PSS. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
you could pick up your first win around week 5.
Yeah,
that's.
I'm not looking forward to that. You know, honestly, I'm playing like I need to buckle up. I'm playing with fear here, but I you know, one thing. My goal this PSS is to win. My second goal is I picked 3 decks that I think are very interesting to play. They're very interesting to watch. They involve like a lot of decisions, and they just like do things that like, you know, what I want to do is like give people the experience of that I got when I watched Rich Shea, you know, playing his Blue-White Dreadnought his Blue-White Dreadnought debut. I don't think anyone's seen him play the deck, aside from maybe across the table at a monthly or during a testing session. And then also, of course, Rich Shea playing Parfait. You know, I want to be the maestro. I think these decks are very challenging, but they're beautiful, and so you know, I'm hyped to show the world what they're capable of. And I think we put on a good show week 1. Like people got a huge kick out of the battle between Grotog and Stasis. It's sad.
Did you watch all the matches and coverage?
Yeah, I mean, I like 2x speeded some, and then you know.
Should I go back and watch it? I was just at the meetup this week.
Yeah. I highly recommend. I recommend all of them. I think that the Alvaro Secret Force game was like a little bit whatever, but you can just kind of tap through that. You know, Alvaro destroys all the lands game 1, and then just gets.
That seems to me the most interesting one to watch, because like Mike Arnold's deck actually does something, and justice occurs. I mean, so justice occurs in that one. Justice occurs in you against Hurst. Justice occurs in Rich's match. Right?
I wouldn't say that it was justice for Rich. Rich just like in a calculated and cold.
Had a masterful strategic game that was basically unbeatable. How's that not justice?
I mean, that's justice, but it's also just like the drama really was him sort of like revealing that he's smarter than everyone.
Yeah, so, and then...
Like, I would never Vision Charm targeting my opponent. Like, I would just, like, I'm still going to use it on a... Even if I think that I need to counter 8 spells.
So in the range.
No, because even though I know I'm going to, like, counter 8 spells and, like, win the game, I would still, like, hedge to just be like, okay, well, maybe I'll draw Dreadnought and have, like, 5 Vision Charms in my hand, and then I also can't lose.
He already decided I was going to... So the danger about that is becoming inflexible when you come up with an inevitable plan, right? The danger is becoming inflexible around the inevitable. Right, so well, I mean, I lost the regional championship.
The irony is that the irony is in that game where Rich Vision Charms his opponent, Mill 4, he wins with Meddling Mages. So the Mill plan doesn't actually come to light. And
yeah, but he probably also changed. So it's like when Brian Selden was playing Black Vice, right? Like Black Vice turns out to never kill anybody, and it just becomes annoying. But then when the opponent can't stockpile more than 3 cards, for example, in a blue-white mirror, they have to get under 4 cards in order to just not die. All of a sudden, he has a massive advantage in being able to win counter wars, right? Like,
So like one begets the other one, maybe. I don't know. I haven't watched the match yet, but it seems to me like justice.
I mean, I lose my mind. I just thought that. I mean, Rich is just a genius.
I mean, you were texting me while it was going on.
Yeah, that's why he ascended. I feel like
it probably was justice.
Yeah, he ascended.
And then it sounds to me like Tom's match was exciting, right? So
Tom's matchup is pretty cool. Yeah,
it was exciting.
I mean, I'll tell you this: on game 1, he has turn 2 Dreadnought and he wins. Game 2 is a little bit more vibing.
Well, dude, this is a 6-hour podcast week already, so.
Yeah,
go to the gym.
I'm going to have to prepare our listeners for this one because we just did another hour 40 on the PSS and we started with 2 hours. So we're literally looking at a 4-hour PSS podcast.
I think we just released 3 episodes.
It's time sensitive because week 2 is going to happen. We literally need to get it all out before week 1, which is Thursday.
Just release them all like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday or something.
Yeah, probably have to do that. Well,
all right.
Thank you for listening.
It's nice not being the mic of a podcast, I'll tell you that. I've always been the mic of the podcast. Congratulations, you've ascended to Mike. Love Spike Colony.
Love Spike Colony.